I have worked on many topics, including macroeconomics, taxation, risk, insurance, and so on. But my main topic is household behavior. And of course, from a policy point of view, this is crucially relevant because at the end of the day, policies are trying to influence household behavior and measure the outcome in terms of household welfare, try to improve household welfare. So understanding how households react to policies and what kind of consequences policy will have both on their action and on their well-being is a crucial component of policy analysis. Well, you must understand what the situation was before, when I was a student and when I was a young researcher. Essentially, the implicit assumption of all models was that a household was a single decision unit. The one thing that those models could not possibly capture is the notion of power within the household, and more importantly, the fact that some policies could change the balance of power within the household and therefore change behavior. And what those kind of models aimed at doing, and I think to some extent did succeed in doing, is precisely to capture this notion that power matters, that who gets the final word has an impact on the nature of the decision and on welfare. And not only that, but now we have the tools, and not only by me, but by a bunch of co-authors and other people, we start having tools to understand the very nature of intra-household decision processes. There are plenty. It's a booming literature, so there are many directions in which you can go. Let me mention three of them. One is the process of household formation and dissolution, the dynamics of marriage, and the influences of those kind of dynamics on investment in children, welfare of children, and so on. The second one is this notion of within household inequality, which I think is crucially important both in developed and developing countries. Now, in particular, many, I would say most, policies we want to address the impact of family composition. For instance, if we define a benefit that should be paid to couples without children, what level should be paid with couples with 2 children? If we define a poverty level for a couple with 3 children, what should it be for 1 child or childless couples or whatever? Usually these kind of issues, which are crucial for the design of policies and also for the evaluation of policy, rely on an approach which is called equivalent scales, which essentially assume equal or fair division of resources within a household. More and more we realize that first, it's not the case from a positive point of view, and B, more importantly, that we now have the tools to understand the intra-household allocation process, therefore to explicitly address intra-household inequality, and maybe to devise policies that will directly try to correct those aspects. The third one will be the notion of commitment. What do we call marriage? And in particular, what's the difference between marriage and, say, cohabitation? I tend to believe that one important aspect is commitment. Commitment is crucial whenever you look at long-term relationship, for resharing, for investment, and so on and so forth. We don't understand well for the moment the logic, the dynamics of those relationship, and in particular of commitment. We have some ideas, but this is work in progress. Let me start with the second question, which is a very deep one. I would not say that inequality is bad per se, and we should always fight inequality. My colleague and friend Gary Becker used to say, you call it inequality, it sounds bad, but you call that return on investment in human capital, then it's very good. To some extent, some inequalities might generate incentives. If the fact that you have a diploma has an impact on your wage or your well-being, that gives you incentive to invest into knowledge, and that might be a good thing. One thing on which we will all agree that inequality is not acceptable is inequality in opportunities. What I see now is a rise in this inequality of opportunities in the sense that kids unlucky enough to be born in families with the wrong background, in which parents don't have the expertise or the time to invest sufficiently, will start life in a very handicapped situation. One area, I think, in which policy should be crucially important is addressing this, in particular through very early intervention for kids at the early stage of life, and especially targeting kids coming from the less favored background. So, first of all, the example of Luxembourg and Monaco are extreme but quite interesting. If Luxembourg or Monaco should impose restriction on immigration, essentially the economy would stop. In Monaco, there are 30,000 residents and there are 50,000 people working there. So the economy would just stop. Now, it's an extreme example, but what it tells us in a deep sense is that most of the time, immigration has a huge benefit for the country that's receiving immigrants. Why? Because the population of immigrants is very highly selected. The people who migrate most of the time, first of all, they usually are not the less educated people in the country they're coming from, but in addition, they have this entrepreneurial kind of attitude. They're willing to take risks. They're willing most of the time to work hard, invest, and so on and so forth. When you look at the outcome of the Irish, the Jewish, or the Italian immigration, or the Central European immigration to the US back in the early 20th century, you see that the benefits has been among us. So I'm very, very concerned with this kind of restrictive vision that we should close our borders and that immigration is a danger. I think mostly the opposite. Of course, you need to be more specific. There are plenty of aspects linked to its crime and so on and so forth. And I don't want to be naive on this, but I would say that mostly immigration is a huge chance, a huge opportunity. And the U.S. of all countries should be aware of this.